did fine for the first like 16 months of the pandemic, and
I ate so small couple of days today. Feels light. Fantastic bacon. I busted open the thing and then Melissa and I went like. Tasted everything.
I'm just, yeah, it's, yeah.
They're so good.
That's
No,
right.
this ain't just to have, just to.
Not, you know,
Yeah,
not
not
because
for
my candy
not for this particular scenario, which is all the time, but.
I eat chocolate when I was 40 years old.
That's all
Okay.
I got chocolate eating
Thank
habit.
you.
Me too.
It was like snowball.
See?
Thank
We're
you,
live.
See,
appreciate
mine was
that.
after ate it when I was growing up, like I
Never.
could have a little piece of my nectar now.
Okay.
Like, I feel like now I get when people are
Thank
like, that's me.
Every day I have to have like.
Mike's alive.
Everybody ready?
Yep.
So I'd like to open the meeting for December 20th, 2021. We're back from the executive session. Welcome BOE administrators, students, and community members who are at home. Please note that Board President Doug Sondheim is unable to join us this evening. I'll start the meeting by turning it over to Dr. McCursey for announcements, district highlights, and the COVID-19 update.
Great, thank you very much. It's nice to start these meetings with good news. Sabine and Gus often are really great at following in with some color. If I pick up some areas you may talk about. The first several you might not, but first, Hillsides Elementary School's first grade, I'm not sure if you're going to talk about the first grade, but they put together donation boxes for children in need in coordination with the Pajama Project, an area not-for-profit organization. Second, Hillside also kicked off their Winter Spirit Week on Friday, and that'll continue throughout this week. Now, rumor has it that Farragut Middle School also has a Spirit Week going on based on attire I've seen and signs I've seen, and maybe the high school, but you can speak to that. Third, the Hastings Alternative School Program held its second field trip last week, going ice skating. So that was something we felt we would feature. Fourth, the High School Student Union, in coordination and collaboration with the Hastings Police Department, put on the talent show, which maybe you'll speak to. I was unfortunately unable to be there, but I heard it was quite exceptional, with great singing and other talents all the way around, including from the police department. As I had put out in my community letter on Friday, this past Thursday had a magnificent winter concert, and I put in a long list of all the composers because I was just incredibly taken with the reach and depth and complexity of all of the pieces from all the various groups. And you're always at risk of naming names in any of these documents. One, just do I get the spellings right and all. The final draft had all the spellings right. But just an incredible compliment to Hastings with what was sought to perform, what was performed in both the groups and then the individuals putting it forth. And as I described, the trio of the musical and choral directors and instrumental directors, it's really a gift for Hastings. So it was really quite spectacular. And last but not least, there's a brand new National Board Certified teacher in the nation and here in Hastings, and that's Stephen Lopez. And we'll start giving that a little more play because maybe that incredible accomplishment to do that's been gobbled up by COVID the last couple of years, but a while back, that was one of the greatest things a teacher could do, was to pursue that independent certification. And I know Mr. Lopez worked very hard at that. He's very proud of it, and Jason's working with him to give that appropriate attention and play. So those are truly 6 items of good news. Regarding COVID, which it's on the agenda for me to talk about, we'd all wish it wasn't. I think we know that we are now back into it. Omicron would seem to be what's affecting us greatly. Every Monday morning at 8:30 by Zoom, superintendents gather with George Latimer and the Westchester County Department of Health. A week ago it was about 4,000 cases in the county. Now it's double that. It's about 8,000 in the county. Still far better than before, but that's quite a rapid rate of increase. Issues of hospitalization or morbidity aren't keeping pace with that, which is good. Mr. Latimer didn't have those exact statistics, but it's obviously, to use his word, it's exploded. It's taken off in very extreme ways, which many of you are certainly well aware of. There are no plans to have the state take any drastic actions. There are no plans for the county to take any drastic action. The strong tenor is, let's be in school. Let's be in school. Let's do everything we can to be in school. What would take us out of school, as I've put in a couple communications, and is now affecting some districts around us, is staff being affected, because we are seeing that even if vaccinated, you are coming up positive. A couple days ago, some of you may have heard me say the Cornell case, I hope is not instructive, but it's proving to be. Cornell University, there were some 300, 400, 500 positives. Nearly all were vaccinated. And so I think we're starting to see that pattern. The concern there is even a place like Hastings, where we're at a very high vaccination rate, if we start having staff who come up positive, there are only so many teachers to go around. And that's why, for example, last week Carmel High School had to go into temporary remote. I think tomorrow a few more in the region will go into temporary remote. But the reality is our infection numbers are low. And today I put out a letter to all of our families and staff to say we're staying in remote, because if you run the numbers, we're at 2 or 3% who may be directly affected, which means we're 97 to 98% healthy. Now there's always that risk it could swing, but you want to stay in school for that great majority. Since I sent that letter out today, I don't know that I need to repeat it for you, but I had a good number of families writing in saying thank you for that. We appreciate it. We understand you're going day by day. A few families are concerned. They're anxious. They're hoping we would go into remote, just given, especially ahead of the break, and what that would mean if one's positive. We're going to evaluate it every morning. The principals and I meet with Maureen. Melissa's away for family reasons, as we'll explain, but we're looking at it very carefully, looking at the county data, looking for guidance there, talking to our medical directors. My hope right now is we will make it to Thursday. Last thing I'll say on this, before I want to have Maureen speak a bit to test to stay, is this is an incredible high demand, yes, for the families, yes, for the students, but it's very high demand for staff, and it's especially very high demand for the administrators. Jennifer spent most of the weekend, she has a young family, most of the weekend contact tracing. And yes, I'm some more in the mix, but my life's easy. I'm more at the end of a phone saying this or that, that or this. I'm not the one chasing literally hundreds and hundreds of contacts as has emerged. And so we did, going into the break, we're concerned that if we're in school all the way to Thursday and you have a positive on Thursday, that means on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, if you're celebrating, you're going to be spending Christmas Eve or Christmas Day chasing contacts, not necessarily with your family. So Maureen, again, works some magic, and we do have coverage, so our building principals and assistant principals won't have to handle that. Because that's, as you can see, for a very hardworking team to suddenly say you may lose time with your family at a pivotal point is almost beyond having, so I think we have a solution on that. So why don't we talk a little about test to stay. We're one of the few districts that actually started down that path this soon. And I'll, one thing I will say, just because I need to, is on the call today amongst all the supers, people asking about, well, will it make a difference to kids being in school? And thanks to Maureen being prompt with me, I'm on an 8:30 call, I could put up my little voice and say, well, we tested 2021 today. One was positive, which meant that 21 students were in school as opposed to not. And I think that was helpful to other superintendents in the region. A district, I'm not going to mention which, they're testing 200 students a day with test to stay. So there are some long-term issues there for us. But the good news is right now we're into it thanks to Maureen and the nursing team. I don't know if you want to mention any more on the
Yes.
test to stay.
Yeah, so as Bill said, we began this morning, and again, just to start off by acknowledging and thanking our incredible nursing staff here. I mean, honestly, like I actually came in early to just assist. I don't know if I was much help or getting in the way of people, but just to kind of help out if there was any need with phones and things. We had students, it really ran Being it was the first day, and we decided to run it exclusively down here, taking the children from Hillside that were also part of that program. Everyone came here. I think, for the first day, it ran incredibly smooth, and just to see the nurses, the way they interact, which I'm always super impressed when I'm around them, the way they are with students, and it was really, like, I feel like when I was getting, like, last year, a swab, I think I was more like these kids were, I was like, I'm gonna have you do it if I ever need to do it again. But it really went well, and I think all the parents, it seemed to work well. We're gonna make some adjustments for tomorrow. We now understand we can move some students back, because I think initially we weren't sure, so like the spacing between students. So, that went incredibly well. They have been, in addition to our administrators, quite frankly, the nursing staff and their clerical support are constantly on the weekends also involved in that. Part of the surveillance test is an example too. Although the county runs it on our behalf, the test results come in on Friday night. Sometimes I'll look in the morning, I'm like, you texted me at 1 a.m., like, just to kind of say, did you look at that? So, I mean, they really, but they're super committed to having our students in school. They understand, as Bill said, like that, is their goal, and actually, it was a good way to start my day, because then really after that, I'm like, I really have nothing to complain about, because they were just really positive and committed to ensuring that as long as we're able to, we'll have the students in school. So I think tomorrow we're starting a bit earlier, and I think we may have a few more students included in that. So I think as time goes on, if we need to continue that, I think we'll look, Bill, to see where we are, but there may even be an ability to bump up I hope we don't get there, but being we know how many we can handle here, I think it works well, and people knew within 10, about 12 minutes or so after their or 15, I'm sorry. It could have been 12 minutes, the test results were 15. But it was, I know in some other districts, that we read, Bill, some of them had a longer lead time, like they didn't tell parents for an hour. So, I mean, considering our parents knew within, I think, a minute after that, the test, I was like staring on top of it, we were calling people, so it really worked out well. Yeah, I think that was all I wanted to say on test this day.
Can I just ask a quick question, Maureen? You might have mentioned this already, I'm sorry if you and Bill mentioned this, I have a question, in a past meeting. But, when you go to Walgreens and you buy a test, it's like you get 2 tests for $25, it's ridiculous, it's so expensive. Are you guys getting a break on the tests?
So there were 2 things. When we started to, when Bill, again, he's on all these meetings, and when the idea that the test to stay was likely to start to potentially occur, we did buy some tests, because there's 2 things. We've purchased tests because although there are some free tests available, we wanted to have them for both testing our staff, which we do here for our unvaccinated staff. And then also planning, we wanted to be able to, if in the event that became an option for us, we wanted to be able to offer it right away. So we didn't want to buy too many, so I think, as to your point, they were expensive, but I think we may have mentioned this before, as we know, we did receive a lot of federal money, this would be an appropriate use of that money.
Great.
And I think we felt comfortable, like, trying to, position ourselves that if, in the event the county allowed us to do so, we would be able to begin right away without relying solely on, like, what tests may be available to us. That being said, we did have them on hand. We were all ready to start. And I think it was Thursday or Friday of last week, we received a call from the county that they did have some tests available to us, and we sent somebody over and they picked them up. So we do have those. I think, it's always good to have our own supply on hand, so that in the event there's any delay in or any, shortage of those tests, we'll be able to continue to our commitment to provide that option to parents.
If I may add on that, I guess it's a plea for advocacy from you as board members through your associations to the state, because one of those strong points coming out of this morning's meeting, and interesting enough, I was on the phone later today with the head of a major independent school in Manhattan, and we're going to have to be able to get to the ability to test almost everybody. We're going to have to get to the ability to test almost everybody. And that was the tenor this morning. Joe Rick is a great, Jen Lemay is our leader. Joe Rick is just a great leader on these things, and he's the White Plains super at this point, and saying we're at an inflection point. And it's clear that if we now have almost anyone who's vaccinated potentially getting this, the only way we sort out whether you're healthy to stay is the testing. And so, we have scale on our side, we have some wherewithal on our side that other districts don't, but that's gonna run out fast. And so that's where Joe was saying, we need to be advocating strongly with the state. Now that the CDC this weekend came out and said, you know, you can be in school if you're testing negative, well, we need to have the test to prove that at a very large number. And so you can rest assured the superintendents are gonna push this and are pushing it. I mean, there's a great set of advocacy amongst the supers. One, dare I say we, because I'm new, but they are very much joined at the hip, very thoughtful, very forward-looking. And I think from the School Boards Association, frankly, it's the New York DOH, the governor, they're running, you know, this could be a great thing to run on, is that they've got to step up to make testing available and not a charge. And even though there's been a fair amount of federal money, say that this focus, we need that help. Because in this certain independent school, they're testing 4,000 to 5,000 students regularly. And they, you know, they have the money to go do that. You know, and then this independent school head was saying, well, Bill, I mean, if they're vaccinated or not, you need to test them all. And I said, we're working within the structures of the Test to Stay program, we're working within the state framework, and also within a different resource set. So I don't know if that little speech, dare I say, helps, but I think we just need to keep an eye on this, so.
The one thing, the one thing we do also have that we may be able to leverage a bit more, although it's not everyday bills, we do have the surveillance testing program. And actually, that was one of the things when I was in the nurse's office today, there were quite a few individuals, even in our own staff, who are fully vaccinated, who said, you know what, I want to start participating in that. And that's a once-a-week testing. So we are seeing an increased interest in that, which will then, to your point, like just, you know, give us, that's a resource, although once a week, that the county, they contract with a private company who comes in, we have to support that resource, but they'll be in tomorrow. We shifted it. Typically, it's on Thursdays. We shifted it to Tuesday so that we would have, you know, the information prior to people heading into the holidays. So we had quite a few people who signed up today to participate in that, staff and students.
What I wanted to say, add to that, is that there is no way of knowing how the virus is going to evolve. And I'm just wondering if, and Dr. Makesi, you may know this, but is there conversation surrounding practicality of creating what I'm calling the pendulum, where this is a case where there was a respite, vaccines are available, we are all vaccinated, we are all coming in person, and then all of a sudden we have mutation happening, the virus becomes crazy. Do we have an infrastructure where we can totally swing to another, or we always have to figure it out? Like, is there conversation? And I know we are not having it at our end, so I'm not going to pretend there's anything, but I'm just asking if we should be thinking about where if you're vaccinated and you should get the infection, of course, it's going to make you a little bit sick. It depends from person to person, but is there an infrastructure in place where now continuity of education can continue without us going back to square one, right? You get what I'm trying to say? Like, is there a way that we will immediately say, okay, 6 feet spacing, this, that, masking up, hybrid format, whatever it is? Are we planning a plan B in a case where we have some craziness happening, or we are just going to figure it all out all over again?
I mean, it's a giant question. I think it's the exact question. I think things that have evolved over the last 2 years, I'd say, that are hopeful is that at the ground level, you've got a lot of coordination amongst and between superintendents. Within each district, there's a very well-run district in that regard. I mean, in fact, we could move so quickly on certain things like Test to Stay, the other things, that we have that capacity. I think very good rapport with our medical directors who are able to move quickly. And these are all things that have developed over the last year or two. And I don't need to have been in Hastings to know, because it was similar everywhere else. We're all building those relationships. So we have that. You have a core of supers who can identify, that was a discussion today, we're at this inflection point. But, you know, when might we get guidance? Because we can't make those public health and medical decisions. The minute we as educators start making those, we're on a slippery slope, gets really dangerous. But it's, can that public health and medical set of our partnership, be it the county or the state, move quickly enough to say, and I think that's part of what I said this morning, we may be at the point where the effects on this of most healthy individuals is minimal,
Correct.
but right now, the whole decision structure is you're out for a while. And we need to kind of, we have to adjust that, but as Super said today, we're not so sure we're the ones who can adjust it. Because a few Super said, even though we have some mild cases, some are saying we actually have some of our people who are really quite sick. And so that's not for us. And even a few things I was going to put in some write-ups last week, Dr. Whalen and Dr. Huff and Dr. Sue were great about saying, Bill, we love that you don't want to name us, so don't name us, but don't put that in. You know,
That's correct.
and, you know, for example, on some things, they said, no, you don't have the science yet to say that.
Correct, correct.
You know, so the good news is there are all the right people talking in the healthy places, meaning in organizationally healthy, that's what I mean.
Yeah, yes.
But we need a policy structure, and policy is a big, blunt, slow-moving instrument, right? And, you know, so I think to get very targeted, very specific, it could be, how do we free up the ability to test a lot? And where are resources to test a lot? And if you, so it's so complex, I look for that hook. The hook is where can we test a lot to help us get that handle? But this is a several-day discussion. It's the question of the hour, though.
I mean, I would say, and there's no response to this. This is me just making a comment, but I just feel like there is no way of standardizing people's physiology once you've been vaccinated, right? Even if you get the booster of how you are going to feel when you should get reinfected. So my onus is more about the educational piece, right? After testing, then what, right? If so many people will get infected, even though they have the booster, they are vaccinated, how is the school infrastructure going to hold up? Like, what are we going to do about school? So I mean, I'm not asking you, but I'm just hoping that we get the testing happening and then see, that is a must, of course. Like, I'm hoping that we can get that resources to support it, but then what is the real next step for an educational institution setting, practically? Like, I don't want an answer, I'm just throwing it out there. That's about it, yeah.
Thank you, and thank you, Maureen and the nurses, for all of the incredibly hard work. I do think having the test to stay is impressive at this point, and a lot of kids are taking advantage of it to still be here. Anecdotally, I think the kids really have expressed, in my experience, that they do want to be here. So I'm very thankful that we're able to provide that at this point as we work on these other issues.
And thank you for being so forward-thinking on this compared to some other districts.
Yeah.
It's really something to be proud of. Thanks.
So number 3, the administrative reports. I know Ms. Mansky is not here today.
She had asked me to read her comments, so I'm
Thank
going to
you.
do that. And she did ask me to just share, and she was fine with me sharing. She asked me to share that she is unfortunately out of town at a family emergency, and that she just, you know, she felt very badly about the timing. And of course, I've spoke to her multiple times during the day. And so she's working, but from afar, but unfortunately she wasn't able to be here tonight, and just asked me to share her comments, so I will do so. So let me just pull them up. Okay, I know she'll do a much, I'm going to probably botch her comments, but I'm going to go through them. Chair Council. Chair Council met earlier this week with a focus on continued preparations for the March tri-state visit and received an update on the curriculum review cycle work occurring within the context of the Professional Learning Committee. The department chair people and administrators provided updates on how the logistical preparations were going. The group then solidified shared definitions related to the vocabulary within the essential questions linked to the tri-state visit, including systematic communication, professional community, student success, and collaboration. The group then discussed and identified interview participant groups. They then reflected on Standard 7 of the professional standards for educational leaders to consider Hastings' areas of strength and need. Finally, they needed more, finally, they learned more about the curriculum review cycle development process. That's a mouthful, so I'm sure she can share a little bit more about that when she returns. But you can see a lot of preparation, I know, going into that upcoming tri-state visit. Professional Learning Committee. The Professional Learning Committee has been diligently working to design a curriculum review cycle. We currently are in the process of identifying the phases of our Hastings cycle and determining formatting. Additional information about the curriculum review cycle will be shared with the Board of Education in the new year. And actually, I mean, I'm just going to say, I love this because when I first came here, there was a little, they did practice that a bit more, and I think it will help in your 5-year planning, like it's linked to the budget, because then as you're identifying resources, so I think this is really exciting stuff. Technology development plan. Maureen and I are currently on target with the process and timeline outlined in the technology plan development process timeline document that was recently presented to the Board of Education. We have been meeting with the technology committee and our thought partners from the LYRIC to draft goals and action items. Last week, a faculty survey was sent to gain input to apply to COVID-related questions in the state survey, and an interest form was sent to determine student and parent-focused group participants. And I can say as being part, this is the technology plan, more so than ever, any other time before, is so much, it's so impacted by what we've just gone through. So I think this time in particular, I find it to be a much more robust process, personally, as being part of that. Onboarding of the Farragut Middle School Assistant Principal. Jennifer Spirelli and I have been working closely together to support Ken Catrone's onboarding as the new assistant principal of the Farragut Middle School. A number of the trainings that have already been arranged include lead evaluator training, multi-tiered systems of supports training, restorative practices, crisis prevention and intervention, DASA coordinator, and regional forum for assistant principals and testing coordinator. And he's still with us. Additional Star Renaissance training, both for Ken and for the K-8 faculty, has also been arranged. For my comments tonight, I just have, I'm going to provide a transportation update, I think, in the next segment of the meeting, and then I'm just going to share some progress photos of the Hillside Edition. So I just wanted to see if there was anything else I wanted. Okay, no, that was it. Okay.
And Melissa agreed if you read for her, you could put a budget twist on it. Was that part of the deal?
But yes, she did. I know. I was like, oh, what should I? Maureen's been doing the most of the work in the technology. No, I'm kidding, which is not true. But so here we're seeing now what the building. Each week now, I think we're getting closer now to the real finishing, way of what Hillside's going to look like, and we now see the entry door installation and the finished curtain wall glazing right at that front part of the building. The next part that will be coming in, which again, I think I've mentioned this before, but it's been delayed a bit, is that pergola is coming. It's actually been painted in the shop. The installation will happen in January, and there's so much coordination with this building because of the details of it, but I think we are now getting to see like a real finished product there on the front. The next photo here is showing our classroom window installation, and as you can see on the photo on the right, which is, I'm sorry, unfortunately turned sideways, it's such a beautiful, what's so lovely about this building is that it really just captures the natural beauty of the Hillside site, and I will tell you, if I was working there, I would be wanting one of those classrooms in the back because it would actually make your workday great. It's beautiful, really beautiful. Again, you're seeing the continuation of the finishing work that's going on inside the building, the floor tile, in all the bathrooms. As you may recall, there's, with the cafetorium area, there's gang bathrooms that are being put right outside of there. And then also in each classroom, there will be a single stall bathroom. The new gas feed, the good news is Con Ed came, they did the hookup and it works, so that, I mean, it's like a milestone from a sense to ensure that, you know, when those systems, when the boiler there needs to be fired up, so that was done last week also. The framing of the ceilings, painting, exposed steel, electrical panels, and the continuation of the drywall. I just clicked out of, give me just 1 second, I'm sorry, oops, sorry. I have like it up on my screen too, because I can't read those little words up on, from this distance. What else do we have here? We have the, just, again, different pressure tests, gas pressure tests, all the different things to ensure that things are now in working order and ready to be used when needed. The kitchen hood delivery, again, this is now, as we get into the finishing touches of the kitchen. At each of these phases, we're also in coordination with the Department of Health, as when you're installing a kitchen into a new school facility, they have to approve of all the plans prior to it being able to be used, so that's another coordination that's going on currently. The last rooftop air conditioning unit has been installed, and again, these were all done. That's why you may have saw the messages, we had to shut down Hillside because there was different cranes coming in. Rooftop duct work is continuing, and fire stops and walls. And again, some of these nice aerial drone shots that really demonstrate and give us a good sense of the way the new addition, how it's, you know, complements and fits into the existing building. One of the things I just wanted to mention, I think I've spoken about before, that we are planning on that area on the side of the building. Of course, it'll have grass, but we're planning on putting some gardens and different vegetation and landscaping in that area. And actually, Joe Martirana had met with a gentleman that the village had put us in touch with, who has like an expertise in like stormwater management. And Joe, actually, I was unable to attend that meeting, had met with him, and really developing that area and having a lot of gardens and vegetation is really obviously beyond really nice to have. It's extremely useful as we talk about, you know, stormwater management and ensuring that that'll be a good mitigation factor. So because we wanted to connect with him, as you know, anytime you're putting, you know, expanding the footprint of a building, you want to ensure that there's a strong stormwater management plan in place. And that is all for the update on Hillside.
Thank you so much.
You're
Those are
welcome.
really beautiful, those windows are amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
How does the auditorium look, Maureen? You know, I'm
Oh,
always gonna ask you
upstairs?
about FMS.
You know,
yeah.
it's funny because now, a lot of similar to Hillside, a lot of the guts of the work is really like electrical and HVAC and things like that. So some of those things happen above, you know, the actual space. And they were doing kind of demo and prep work and things, but now they're actually entering into a phase of like, where we'll see it more like in the actual auditorium space. That it's still scheduled in terms of like to be reopened in March, but now we're gonna be able to see the actual like physical nice things that are happening in the space. So,
And
like
the music suite?
we've had people here the entire time, but there's larger crews that are gonna be mobilizing in terms of that kind of like carpentry and, you know, doing all the upgrades of the way it looks, but all the other things that were like the big bulky chunks of the work are well underway up there, so it's
You
exciting.
said the music suite is also.
Yeah, the
like-
music suite, we actually received our certificate of occupancy, that,
right.
because we had to file that paperwork with the state to ensure like all the fire inspections and that were done. I mean, the one thing, and actually I was discussing with one of the principals today, I said, you know, obviously we would like to have all the cabinetry installed, although theoretically we could now open it once. That was like a piece that had to occur prior to us being able to open it. So if for any reason, and I hope this won't be the case, if it is delayed a touch, we may allow them to use the space. You know, we will allow them to use the space, because I don't want to delay that any further either. Like, we can start moving things. I mean, it would have been nice to get everything in place, but I mean, one way or the other will be done by the end of January. The delivery of those items is now scheduled to occur in the beginning of January, but we kind of said to them, if it gets delayed another few weeks and you want to get back into space, we'll make it work for you. And then, once everything comes in, we'll move you out for a few days, get everything back in, and then reopen it officially. So, yeah. Mhm.
I'm not sure if we are thinking of doing some kind of solar. You were talking about solar sometime.
Oh, yeah, actually, I meant to mention that earlier. This evening, on the actual business items, the board is being asked to approve a contract for Hillside. The current, when we kind of finalized, is for the existing building, though, not for the addition. We're not looking to put panels because of the way that roof is constructed. But we are at a point where we are moving forward with a solar project at Hillside. And again, to remind people who may not know, we had looked at either having our own panels. This is, we're partnering with like Community Solar, which would be installing the panels on a rooftop, which would then generate power back to the grid that could be used for the residents in Hastings. And the district would receive a payment in form of a rental for providing that, and also access to that power if we needed to access it as well, so.
Terrific. We know that was many years in the.
It is, I know. Yeah, and right now, I think with the energy prices going up, I mean, it's
Yes,
definitely gonna work
exactly.
well. I mean,
That's
because
what
we
I
all
was
know that the, even though we have a very good deal on electric, and not as good as, I think solar can provide now.
Great, thank you so much.
welcome.
Thank you.
We're on to number 4, the student report. Thank you two for being so patient with us this evening. Sabine and Gus.
Good evening, everyone. Like Dr. McCursey mentioned, the talent show and winter concert were very successful. And the high school is having a sort of holiday spirit day on Thursday where students can wear pajamas or holiday-related outfits. Congrats to Senor Lopez on his national board certification. I've been one of his students for 2 years now, and it is certainly an impressive accomplishment. The track team has done well in the last few meets, which is significant because about a quarter of the high school student body is on the team.
Whoa.
Seniors have started to get early decision and early action college decisions, so congrats to all those who were accepted. Juniors are getting into full college mode as well. There was an official college meeting last week. People are also starting to get college counselors. Girls basketball won the Briarcliff tournament, North Rockland tournament, and they are 4-0 as of now, off to a very strong start. Paige Martin was MVP of the Briarcliff tournament. She's a senior this year. Although I wish I could fill the report with cheery news as the holidays approach, I think it is fair to say that morale is low across the board when it comes to the student body. Everyone is pretty much in a break mindset by now. There were a lot of exams and projects last week. It's also clear that a lot of people are preoccupied with COVID concerns, strangely reminiscent of the early days of the pandemic, I would say. I've heard a lot of weekend plans being canceled so everyone can stay safe and COVID-free while on vacations and seeing family members this week.
Yeah, I've got the privilege of sharing with you all the student feelings about COVID. I don't agree with some of these, but we've talked to all the different grade level presidents and gotten some ideas from them. So people are pretty anxious about COVID, according to the presidents. There is a lot of worry about having holiday plans canceled because of quarantining and testing. People are worried about getting their family sick, and especially some of the cases in the middle school for kids who have younger siblings have been worrisome. People kind of want to have an option to go remote, which personally I don't agree with. I think we should stay all in. I agree with what you've been saying, Dr. McCursey, about keeping it steady. But I don't know how much of that, and a bunch of the different SU reps agree with me, is just people wanting to go on break right now versus actually having legitimate COVID concerns. But definitely for people that are immunocompromised, and I know a lot of them, a couple of my friends have that, Omicron is definitely scary. So I think it's helpful that there's so much effort being put into keeping everyone safe and testing, and we'll definitely report back and make sure everyone knows how much is going into the COVID efforts.
They can still, Ms. Caraballo, students can still sign up for the weekly testing when
Yes.
they return, right?
Yep.
If they are feeling nervous, maybe that's something to convey, is that, that is very much available.
Yeah, and I think, they encourage it, meaning the county really would like to see, they feel that there's a lot of value, and the more people that sign up, especially now that we're finding people who are testing positive, like we're vaccinated, so I think every time, like, they schedule it, they're reminding the importance of participation. So again, we did see the uptick for tomorrow's, participation, so.
What was the policy in place before COVID, when kids are sick and there wasn't anything, right? Jeremy
No.
is shaking.
No, you
You
stayed
just
home.
stay
Fever,
home,
you
there
stay
was
home.
no alternative work.
Well, you get your homework from your guidance counselor, right?
That's
Like, you would
about
call
it.
guidance
Check
together.
online
Yeah,
or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, Gus, your points are very well taken. The communication that went out to families today at 3, since Thursday, we've had 15 cases. So that's a small number. One is too many, but we know at 15, and none in the high school so far. But we're watching, tomorrow morning I'll sit with the principals and we'll look and we'll talk. And this may be a case where numbers help for the next couple of days. That people make their own choice on vaccinations. I obviously encourage it. We are seeing with Omicron, if you are vaccinated, the effects so far are minimal. Again, I don't want to get ahead of a fellow super and say we'll be cautious there, because you do see a few cases. But again, we know how to deal with the vaccinations matter, but that's a family choice. I respect that. Masks, no choice. We got to stay that way at this point. The physical distancing, I think most of our rooms are set up, but then we can be smart and give ourselves a little more space even. And the cases at the middle school seem to be pretty isolated to that particular set. We're looking at it very carefully. And if suddenly tomorrow we had it doubling on us, tripling, we might have to say, oh boy, that's now really taken off. And so then we have to do some things quickly. But it's fair to say that 97%, 98% of us are healthy. And do you change your schooling scenario for the 2 or 3%? If we're suddenly going to be coming in at day 6 or 7 or 8%, at that point, I think the answer is obvious. We'd have to. So I really honor and appreciate the straightforward way you both come here as student leaders. And in exchange would say, please have any students read the letter that went out today, read the one that will come out tomorrow, mid-afternoon, and we're just listening really carefully. Because the other thing which was shared by a leader here was, if we went out now, when would we get back? Right? If we went out over 11 to 12 to 14 or 15 cases, when would we come back? It could be because of holiday decisions, and that's something, I'm not dismissing that at all. And families are right now making choices not to be in school these couple of days. I can't encourage that, but that's something that families may make that decision. And finally, that we learned a lot about online learning and remote options. I think the feeling is, and I wasn't here in Hastings, I can't speak to it. I know it is a struggle. It was a struggle in a lot of places. The feeling is right now the in-person is still better. We'd love to get maskless. We're not there yet. So I think we don't want to go back to that online until we really have to. But, every month I sit with the student leaders. I can sit more often, meaning once January hits, because we'll be busy with this, I'm afraid, for January. And we're going to have these discussions then. And I really want to be there present to talk through and listen. And I know others would also like to, so we can get to the right spot on this.
Yeah, I definitely think that there were some people that were worried and wanted that kind of online option, but then you bring up to the regular student, maybe because of the numbers, we might end up going online again. They're all like, no, please, no, I could never do that again. So I think the main percentage of the student body does want to stay all in for as long as possible.
Yeah.
It definitely gets blown up, and I think people really like the idea of going home for break early. But once you, right, this being said, the second you say, remote school, remote learning, online school, people freak out. No way.
Right.
So it's, I think the majority of people really want to stay.
Yeah. I mean, to be deeply personal for a second, I wasn't working hard this weekend, but I was nervous as anything. Because I said, oh my goodness, now I have to be a superintendent in Hastings dealing with COVID, real COVID. And I did that in Weston. Most people don't like doing this work in real COVID. So I said, boy, Bill, you got to get busy now. But here's the point, get away from me, who cares about me? Can we be as productive and constructive again with real COVID? And I wasn't here, but most districts, it was awful. It was awful, wherever you were. So now we know how to kind of try and be at least reasonable, because we're back with real COVID. Hopefully the impact medically will be minimal, but right now it's, the numbers are, but can we then be reasonable with each other, positive, supportive with each other? That's my hope. And I raised the personal because I had to look in the mirror a lot this weekend and go, oh boy, now I'm really tested, And so anyway, I hope that's helpful.
Yeah.
But I commit to you both as wonderful student leaders, let's keep talking.
Well, I'd like to jump in there and just thank you. It's I know you guys are upperclassmen by nature, and siblings here or there might pull you down a couple grades, but we do appreciate the efforts of trying to bring in the younger stakeholders' viewpoints. And as I like the way you said it, you're not dismissive of it, but I think all of our stakeholders, from parents to board members to administrators and teachers, we're all so new at this. So whether it's whiplash or it's just trying to be out in front of it, it's certainly a challenge. And in that sense, I sort of feel it's good timing for us right now. If 3 days of school is normal, we actually do get a 10-day pause to try to watch what's going on. And the words are new to all of us, whether you call it real COVID or new COVID or 2022 COVID.
2022, yeah.
Nothing is like, we're not seeing the deaths in our communities and our counties, but we don't know what's coming forward. And the young stakeholders are allowed their whiplash ideas, and we need you to bring it to us, both of you. So thank you very much.
What I think is interesting about COVID is that the media whips things up, right? Especially when kids see it. And I'm wondering if it would be something that maybe that it would be helpful. I don't know if you know this, but like in the 6 to 18 age group, the number of deaths from COVID is less than 700. I mean, 700 seems like a large number until you think about how many millions, tens of millions of kids are in that age. It's like, when you think about the percentage, it's, like 0.1%. So, there has to be ways to calm people down, because you hear it and you think like it's going to be terrible. So I don't know what the answer is. Maybe the counselors or something could help kids to really understand the difference between real numbers and what it means, because, the other thing is that the cases we're seeing now are all Delta cases. Only 3% of the cases in New York State are Omicron. But you wouldn't know that by listening to the media. So I think that might be, how can we help educate the kids? I don't know,
Yeah,
to the real risks to them of COVID.
I can't speak for the middle or elementary school, but I know in the high school, nobody, unless, with the exception of people that are immunocompromised, nobody's worried about getting it themselves, about really getting sick. It's about the parents and the grandparents.
Got it, yeah.
But I think what's been really effective is how much we've not been talking about it in the last couple months. I think there's, been a pretty, it's been, I don't know if you agree, like, it's been a pretty consistent, kind of quiet message. It's not been, we've had the masks on. It hasn't been as much of a presence in the classrooms and sort of around as it was last year. There's definitely been an uptick in the last week with this Omicron stuff. But I think trying to not blow it out of proportion is really helpful for the student body and just keep people calm and focused on doing work instead of watching the news.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I want to say that I'm not trying to counter it, but when you are in a situation, it's 100% for you. So maybe numbers may be thrown around, But when you are the person within that 700 or within any number of statistics, for you, it's not. 2% is 100% for you. So we just have to be mindful, and I want to echo what Jeremy said, and you as well, that thank you for bringing those voices as well, regardless of what your stance were, and that's important. And this is just, again, I'm thinking of the education part. Is there a tutoring center that the school provides? And if it does, should we, if it doesn't, should we think about, like, I'm always thinking ahead, like that's my nature, and I'm just wondering that this situation is not leaving anytime soon. And if, as academicians, I'm just wondering if we can plan ahead of creating tutoring centers, remote ones. The community, hopefully we can work with the community center. You know, the youth council, we've been talking about this forever to see how we can practically support our students. Like I have neighbor high schoolers who hated remote, they couldn't learn anything. So is there a way that we can have tutoring centers where there can be in-person, regardless of which format that the state tells us to get into, create those centers that students can come in remotely. I'm here, you are all the way here, and I can teach you. You get what I'm trying to say? Like, plan ahead of supporting our students in that academic settings. I think that would be really helpful, because this is school, and at the end of the day, that's, I mean, why we are here for our kids. So I'm just hoping that we don't wait till it hits us, but be more proactive in planning practically how we can support our vulnerable students, maintain Hastings status quo of being a great school, you know, because of the academics. And I'm hoping that we can actually start thinking of a plan B towards supporting our students that way. That's all I want to do.
There are upper school students who sign up to tutor the National Honor Society kids, right? And parents can call in and be assigned a tutor for their students.
Oh.
I don't know if that transferred when we were remote, but that's certainly something
It'll be
that
a
could be
challenge.
looked into.
I think my sister did tutoring last year remotely.
Yeah, there was
with
remote
NHS,
tutoring.
Yes, so it did continue last year remotely, and I know I'm in NHS now, so I'm working with the tutoring program as well. It's definitely a big aspect of National Honor Society, whether you're a member or you're getting tutored or whatever. It's like a big part, so we definitely do have those resources in terms of that program.
Good to know, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna move us to number 5, public comment. No? Okay. Right? No public comments at this time. Moving to number 6, special reports. We have a communications update from Dr. McPherson.
Sure, and 3 of the board members here have been very active through the communications work group on this, and I put a memo into the board docs, which is there, been there for the board since, I guess, Thursday, maybe Friday, with the attachments, and also available thus to the community. I tend to coach people not to read what others could have read, so I'll try not to fall into that, be it in a memo or a PowerPoint. So there were just several parts to this. One is I tried to frame where we've been this year, very, very basic, but I think some of the basic steps here matter. Then laid out what's in this document at this point is the entire combined survey results, staff and family, but then also really the last page was highlights the key recommendations, which I did cut and paste right into this document if people didn't want to go digging. And then lastly, well, almost lastly, there's a draft communications plan featured here, which is shaped, as you'd hope, by some of the findings from the survey, but no survey is the final arbiter, but it gives guidance and influence to what you might want to have in your plan. But then lastly, and we're almost there, I'm told, is it's taken us a while. I didn't want it to be half a school year, but I've been told that by certainly January 4th, we will have a document which you have a prototype of in the material of who to contact when. I'm not saying who to call because it will be email-based, except in a few key phone numbers, and that's all here. So those out in the community can go look at the material. Board, you have it. Why don't I just see if there are questions or comments? I know 3 of the board members have been very active in giving ongoing critique to what's here. Just so you know where we're headed with this is Jason and I will shift over, Jason Platzner will shift over to using after tonight. The plan is sort of the checklist that we have to guide our work. It's already been that, but we'll really kind of formalize that going forward. To work backwards, I'm really hoping this who to contact when will be out, at least for families who've been working with me. I have to modify it once it's, and it'll be useful to staff too, once it's there. But let me stop, see if there are questions, comments, or anything else on this piece. Board.
Yeah, I have, this is just a comment based on our last meeting. We were talking about public comments, and I just want to be transparent about it, especially with the public as well. So, we haven't yet fully spoken about it, but just for the transparency part, is that if we have public comments emailed, there's no way of determining the 3 minutes that needs to be adhered to. And also, I was at first, I think Sylvia was talking about some information that I thought it may take away those that may not be able to be here, but it turns out that people can actually send emails to the board without making it a public comment, because we can actually see it. Because if we make it that you can email your public comment, then it will become like too crazy. So I was concerned, and I just want to sort of take that back. I was concerned that if we don't open that part, people's voices may not be heard, but it turns out that you don't need to make it title it a public comment. You can send it and the board will still see it and also take that full attention towards it. Because once we open the can worm of sending public comment by email, there's no way of controlling it, especially with issues that become. So I know we are yet to talk about it in the policy meeting, but I just wanted to throw it out there now.
Bill, I'd add the communication update. I think switching to that 24-hour summary was quick and right on. I think that helps right now with the communications. It was, 2-3 emails in the same 24-hour period was getting us into a little bit of a spiral. And I like the adjustment that you've written about. And the summaries, building levels, I know we're not saying grade levels, our schools are too small to not practically identify when it's my kid and when it's not my kid. But I do appreciate that communication, what was written up by the all stakeholders who were in there. It looks good.
Great.
Yeah, just for the others who are not on, this is something that I was super passionate about why I ran for the BOE, and I think it's Damaris as well. And Dr. McCursey, I just want to say that I very much appreciate you're so open to this, any suggestions we have, and I think that the community really appreciates it too. So thank you so much for really embracing this passion project of ours and working forward. Thank you for that.
Okay. Great.
Okay, to move on.
Please.
To 6B, the transportation update from Maureen.
Sure. So I think if some of you recall that we had promised that at this point of the year, when some of the things that were occurring at the beginning of the school year were sorted out, we would come back to you with an update on where we are currently and some of the things that are our plans as we look to next year. So I'm just going to basically really share with you things that were developed by Ardsley to address a lot of the concerns. So again, as Bill said, I won't bore you with going through each of the details here, but just a reminder of some of the challenges that we had this year in transportation. And again, this is really just a summary, and some of them are due to the national. We talked a lot about the shortage of drivers, and of course that's in this list, but there were many other things that were impacting our transportation department this year. And that's why, although the shortage of drivers was absolutely a piece of it, there were many other kind of things that were also driving a lot of the issues we experienced, and much of it was driven by a turnover in the longtime director of our transportation consortium, who was responsible for doing all the routing for the districts, as well as other key people in those offices. So again, this was a list, and there's probably some others that really contributed to what we experienced early on in the school year. And then as we looked at that list of the challenges we had, of course, that gave us a place in which, you know, the three things that were really problematic were, as listed here, staffing, communications, and the routing itself. And you'll see now where we are on each of these and what the plan is going forward. In terms of the staffing, and we kind of started with things that are kind of in progress right now. So in addition to the long-term supervisor of that department, there's also, we've in previous years have also have had an assistant supervisor in that department, because again, transportation is extremely difficult, and having that, all that knowledge reside with one person is very difficult, and plus the sheer volume. So we did have an assistant supervisor that had been trained a couple years back, had left, and then in the interim with COVID, it's a civil service position. Civil service requires us to call the county to a test and then hire off that list. So it is very restrictive. Part of what we experienced this year is when that person had left us to another district, with what was going on, there was a delay in getting that test and then hiring for that. So that is in the works, and I think, I know it has not happened yet, but we anticipate that to be happening in the next few months, so that'll be really helpful as we're entering into next school year. Clerical support, again, really key. We know our clerical people just answering of phones, getting the details of what's going on. Transportation is an extremely difficult office to work in, high volume, very early hours. Snow days, you're in the office because we still transport, and they have a hard time retaining staff in those, because then when other things open up in other districts, people transfer. So, we really talked about, incentivizing those folks to stay, whether it be through stipends or, either increasing the pay level. So that, again, is in progress, and RZ is working to that end. Drivers, we need to, in addition to having our out-of-district contracts, we need to start building our own capacity for manning buses. RZ School District, who does own some of their own buses that also service the Quad Village, they have a few of their employees that are certified drivers, and they've been looking to increase that. And we are also looking to possibly, get some of our folks in the event that there's need, because there was actually 3 buses that were sitting at RZ that nobody could drive. So then Bill's got a CDL. I mean, we're going to announce it in 2 weeks when he takes his driver's test out in the parking lot.
Lisa Brady, Ryan, Chris.
I'm going to set up the
supers.
cones for him we'll all go out there and watch him.
The 4 supers are going to be come back.
I thought about getting one. But you can see the different recruitment efforts that also we're trying to increase that driver pool. Again, with RZ, these are some of the priorities. I mean, anyone who may have been impacted by this can tell you that it was also very difficult, because sometimes just not getting the information was equally frustrating to buses not showing up. So RZ has instituted internally a weekly, bi-weekly transportation internal meetings that are occurring, so that they can really assess the things that are the most problematic and really put their focus to solving those things. Again, and this is for the Quad group. The Quad group is actually expanded beyond the Quad and includes Edgemont also. And we do have some other districts that we do partner on some of our routes with, but primarily Edgemont is in that consortium. Mamaroneck also is someone we do partner with as part of that grouping also. But again, just kind of breaks down some of the things that we're going to be putting into place. Because I think that was an area where we noticed a very problematic in the beginning of the school year. So just ensuring that we're all knowing what the priorities are, what the issues are, that we're able to have a point of contact there, and we're able to communicate and prioritize the issues that we're that are occurring. And then we also talked about some improvement opportunities, such as putting GPS in all of our buses. And that is something I think we're all, in the process of, although there's a cost in doing so, it's really important. And then, in addition to that, I was not able to I didn't have access to the routing software. I was able to get the routes, but just being able to sometimes, like I've said to them, partner with them, reviewing the routes, because sometimes just knowing Hastings, more like logistically, some of the people routing aren't as familiar. And sometimes just in doing so, or it will be like helpful in making corrections as we see fit. And again, just, how else, communications via blasts and increasing the need to do that when needed. The routing, so again, this just gives you a timeline of of what we're planning on doing for this upcoming school year, so we ensure that the routes really are well-developed and that we have time to make those revisions if necessary, and ensure that everyone, that in-district and out-of-district students, we have those well in advance. And then if people are having, in particular, probably more on for both in-district, out-of-district, once the parents have access to those, if there are some issues, we can address those sooner than later, instead of waiting until the end of September. So again, April to June, you see there that's kind of the first rollover, meaning they take existing routes, roll those over, add additional students, drop those who may not be eligible anymore in those particular schools. And that gives us kind of that first route. And again, you see the key timelines there. And it is extremely important, as being involved in transportation a long time, to kind of get on top of them, but the earlier the better. So you can see Ardsley is committed to these dates, and these are dates that they provided to us, after many meetings. So you can see that we are planning on having those, the final pass of the in-district routes done in the first few weeks of July, and then going right and making sure that the special education routes, we spoke a lot about that, about like the priority, and I expressed that to them, that although everyone's a priority, there's certain routes that are definitely more high priority than others, and it's special education, the reason that one kind of stands alone there. We know that some of our students' needs may be a little bit different than some of their private school counterparts, so really ensuring that those routes are done early on, we can look at those and just ensure that they're gonna meet our students' needs is why that one is right after our in-district routes are completed. And then again, it just speaks about how our internal communication amongst the group is going to occur. And then again, you can see the continuation of that timeline and other key dates. And I think we're all of us, in addition to Ardsley, are committed, because they also need information from us that internally we want to ensure that they get our new students, right? So if we're not giving them the information timely, then they can't route people timely. So this is a really important timeline for all of us to follow, to ensure that we're able to get those routes out to parents, they're able to access the portal much earlier this year. And that is the conclusion of the update.
Yeah, let me just add one thing. At the risk of complimenting too much, but Maureen deserves a lot of credit here.
I'm feeling great.
Yeah,
All
no, I mean,
roads lead to Maureen.
I would not have wanted to have been on the other side of the
Always.
table. I did not want to be on the other side of the table during this meeting in Ardsley, because every family in Hastings should know that the advocate was in the room. This becomes a checklist for us. And to Ryan's credit, superintendent, colleague, wonderful man, he stepped up, he listened, he created this, and I think this becomes our checklist going forward. And most of us have had to been closely involved in transportation, and this is 101. This is what you got to have. I don't know if we had it last year. Frankly, that's not Hastings' fault, and I wasn't here, so I can say that. But this is 101. You got to have this. This is the checklist now. Thank you for persisting to get it to happen, and Ryan, superintendent in Ardsley, thank you for producing. This is now the list. You as a board, dare I say, can ask us how we're doing on this list, and in turn, we'll be asking all our partners in the quad how we're doing. And I would final comment, really important, is this timeline on routing is critical. That we got to be meeting that timeline, because then you learn early if you got issues. And you're always gonna have some surprises, but you wanna minimize those. And that timeline on the routing, will do a lot for us, so. Let me stop us. We're ready for questions if there are any, but.
I just have a quick question, Maureen. Do you find that the number of students that are out of district is pretty consistent year on year, or are you finding an increase?
We definitely have an increase. I mean, I think there's, and that's not what and I'll just, of course, say that, that's not unique to Hastings. I think during the pandemic in particular, I think from what I'm told, just even my colleagues, there was definitely a lot more buses, and again, this is throughout Westchester. A lot of private schools, we know during the pandemic, even not necessarily special ed, just even private schools, there was an uptick in children going to them. We definitely have more buses. We have more out-of-district students right now. But that being said, I mean, I'm not saying it's like 5 times the amount, but we do have more. But I do think some of it, again, that's what the general thinking is in the region, that there was definitely an increase of that during the pandemic, because some of this, especially last year, where many of those schools were able to stay in person longer than the public. So some parents may have felt that was best for their children. So we're still kind of seeing that, and I think that may be, contributing to some of that uptick.
Yeah. So I wonder if it'll go down again, or if it'll.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
continue.
that's something, again, it was consistent with our counterparts in the region, and I think that was, in addition to having a driver shortage, there was more of a demand, so it was like a double whammy on them. And then, of course, then with the turnover and all those other things, in particular, the Quad Village really was in a really bad predicament there, but we definitely have more students, buses, and sometimes just even the location where they're going, which requires additional busing as well. So.
More- Maureen, I saw in there a little a bullet point talking about prioritization, how we're obviously we were prioritizing internal busing versus out-of-district busing, and I know routing seemed to be a challenge. I just wanted to put it out there again. I'm not sure of the timing when this board may or may not choose to look into it, but from a budget standpoint and from an equity standpoint, I am interested in looking at prioritizing out-of-district special ed placement plans versus what might be called private school by choice, out-of-district non-specialized education choices. And I don't know if this year will be the year where we're able to take that onto our plate from a budget viewpoint or not. And I think it does depend on what January throws at our administrators. But I did like a lot of the bullet points and the juggling that you've done with staffing and crisis management. And I know that type of thinking is more optional and a luxury that we may not get to, but it is a concern that I don't know if we will have the schedule or the timing to get before we hit our budget season, where I believe it is too late if it doesn't come by April. Is that pretty accurate timing-wise if we don't?
You know,
If
you
we
would
don't
actually
take
need,
it
you
up
would
by
need to kind
March-
of really understand that now. If we're speaking about either, well, I think, back to your point, I think if you notice on the slide deck, it really just speaks to, I mean, in district because that's just a part of like ensuring that they get all of our information, but the special education, I mean, we didn't put in like, not that, I'm saying private school students don't matter, but we understand that the special ed, like first and foremost, and that was something that with the new director this year wasn't as familiar with, and I wanted to ensure that when they saw what our priorities were for our district, that would then, put their focus, because it is a little bit more complex than some of the other routes. But my concern right now in terms of thinking or looking at potentially removing or considering alternates for non-special ed private school students, that does I do need, in order to kind of get the information that we would need to do a really good analysis on it, we do need the transportation department to help us in that analysis. So I think this year may be it may be just tough to kind of get all that information. I think last year, Jeremy, too, and I mean, now in hindsight's 2020, I think, when we started to talk about it again with the pandemic, it wasn't a time where we felt like, is this the time to put people on public transportation? So that's why we sort of paused that conversation, because it, as much as there's the money, there are still our students, and at that time, that was a time in which like people weren't using trains and buses and things, so we were really reluctant to look at it. I can, see if there's something we can kind of look at just to give us a sense, to have some conversation around it, but you're right, like, I think it has to be a decision that's made by March, if that's the direction you're going in.
Is March even too late?
It's even kind of late at that
That's
point,
what I was
I think we
implying,
can
right?
kind of look at it just to kind of, when we present the budget, I can at least give you some level of breakdown of those numbers, just so you can, just have that even just, I'm able to give you the numbers of students in those two categories and what the impact is on, because some of them are shared, as I've mentioned before, some of our routes are shared, so you could have a private school student riding with special ed students. I mean, there's some schools that it's only those children, but many of our schools like that, they do have children that are private riding with special education, so it's not as though they're in separate buses all the time. So sometimes removing one or two private school students does not save you. It depends, like sometimes it does and sometimes it would not be a savings, so that's why the analysis of it is tricky, and you have to know each year who the students are, where they're going, and what, if those routes are gonna be shared or not. So it's not such an easy, it does require that, a little bit more specificity.
And that's why I asked the question, Jeremy, because I was wondering, because there was an article in the Times just today about how more and more kids in public schools are looking to go to private schools, and that this is going to be a trend going forward. That's why I asked if we knew if it was increasing in our district, because if we're seeing an upward curve, then we have to consider that and think about it. But if it's been pretty status quo every year, it's just that we had a busing issue this year, then, that's a
We had
totally
an
another
uptick,
issue.
but I think it's related to COVID. Again, I don't know everyone's situation, but that seems to be happening. But again, many people, especially I think, for some students, we may see that and then it may start shifting back down.
Yeah.
Maureen, what is the estimate number of students who are in the non-special ed curriculum, like compared to our population? Do you have any idea percentage?
For riding and transportation?
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, if they are coming back, can we, I think you mentioned, did you
Yeah,
say
no, I was
37?
more in general, because pulling numbers is always tough
tough,
when
yeah.
we're in good. But in general, just for the board, if this is a February item, we might need to consider it, because if we don't, it's almost always unfair when you have such overlap between our administration and our decision-making. And
Correct.
I do hope that there is a year in the future that's COVID is a lower priority, but I know it's taking up an unusual amount of our resources now. And I don't know if this meeting or the next is even possible, because we're juggling so much.
Yeah,
But
I'm
it is
just-
on our radar, and
radar.
if we miss it again, we might miss it again.
Yeah.
But
I'm not actually, my concern is not even if it's a dent to the budget, taking children outside of their space, even if they are non-special ed, and instruction, maybe it may more or less like moving to another neighborhood, you get what I mean? Because the environment, like, it's a big change. So if it's something that I think we want to think about, then it's something that we have to think about the next cohort. Stop freezing it, you get what I'm trying to say? Like, you can't just shift people.
Are you talking about like if you were to change the
If you were
transportation?
to change the transportation, now they have to think about, so parents may be able to say, hey, I can drop my child, that's
Right.
no big deal. And then there are parents that may not be able to drop their children, so they are forced to bring them back here.
Right.
Which can be an issue in
Right.
itself for the child and even for the whole incorporation
Mhm.
process. So it's a big ask, so
Yeah.
I mean, it should be done if we need to do it, but I'm just saying that, to Jeremy's point, the March may be really late, and also considering all these factors, maybe something that if you analyze and you realize that this is actually creating a dent in the budget, then the suggestion is moving forward, that should not be entertained. Am I making any sense here?
Well, we're
Because then-
required, just to be clear, to provide, private school
It's no
students.
choice, right?
We either have to bus them or we have to provide them, a bus pass or something. So there are things, but I will say one of the things will mention, and this is, as I was thinking about private school students, because of the pandemic and because of the bus shortage, one of the things we've talked about for many years, and we're not doing it on every private school route, but there are two of which I'm aware of that we are in our own, meaning in our district, that because of a shortage, we needed to make the routes more efficient, I mean, we always want to make them efficient, but they had to be even more and more, like, we were really like squeezing, because we had no buses. So I think it became just like a need, especially with our private school students. We do have some students who come here to get picked up. So that's been something we've talked about for years, which actually increases the efficiency of that run. So one of the good things that kind of happened is we have more efficient private school runs right now. And, longer, making more, not more stops, like a few stops through the different villages. One that I'm thinking, I don't want to mention the name of the school, but it just sort of happened. And there's maybe even one student on that route that does get picked up and the parent was like, well, why? Because because the bus is passing their house, so it is okay. But that is something we've been talking about for years, because quite frankly, if they were more efficient, like, I think that's like the first step, like, let's just make them more efficient. Like, let's have those central pickup points, which would be the school which is not, although of course it's nicer to have it, like in certain situations, it would be no different than having other, kids like who come to school here, they have to get to school here. So we had to do it this year because we had no other choice, but, in order to get kids to school on time. And actually, it's been working well, and we're maximizing the seats on those buses. So I think that may be something, if we can continue with looking at that with our private school students, I can tell you it definitely eliminated, like, it definitely saved us money. And it was just because we didn't have the buses, but
And it
we were
worked.
forced to do that and combine routes that would normally not be sort of on the same route. So I think if we continue with some of those, that may be, something that will benefit us financially on those
The
routes.
low-hanging fruit.
I mean, I'm new at this, so you were saying that it's something that is required. I'm just trying to work with the parameters
Legally.
and framework, because I'm just going by what
Yeah.
Jeremy said, and I'm thinking, so I may be having a wrong impression.
We do have to
We do
help
have
get
to-
those students to their schools, whether they're special ed or going to just a private school for other reasons. But as Maureen was saying, there are these creative solutions that they're working on, maybe meeting here. We have talked about bus passes, but, for certain age groups, that may make people uncomfortable, they're too young. So, they're always looking for ways to make it more efficient, but reasonable.
And that's what
Maureen,
happens,
you've
because we
looked
just
at it
start
many
doing.
years.
Yes.
We've looked at it many years. This
We
isn't
did
the
look at
first
it.
time this topic has come up.
Oh, really?
I mean, at least
It's expensive.
It's-
It really is
this
very
has been-
costly, so.
every year this issue is revisited pretty much.
And it's not, it's, I
But
mean,
you
it's
examine
complex.
the cost and you present the graph. I
Yes.
mean, if we were
Yeah.
to look
Yeah.
back at the budget presentations from last year and the year before and the year before that, in that 80-slide presentation, you're gonna find the slide that says, this is how much we're spending, this is how it's broken down.
No, it hasn't been broken down based on the way I've been curious to look at it.
No, I didn't actually hear what your question was because I was in the
No,
right
no,
room.
yeah.
No, I'm just saying,
Well, I did do it 2 years ago, Jeremy. I mean,
Yeah.
2 or 3 years ago, I did do the per cost per student
I think it
on
was
those
our
routes.
first year.
Yeah.
It was our first
But
year
it
on
is
the
a
board.
lot. I mean, it's a lot to, not for me, just to get that information, and it is, again, it's hard because there are so many factors, and again, it is something, to me, transportation is extremely expensive. And then also, I know there's been times other boards have considered it, but there's other reasons, just because a child's not special ed, that they may go to a private school, that may also sometimes be something that there's a need for that child. But a lot of the schools, because they have upper and lower schools, so then it's like, well, you don't want to send the lower, but if you're going already to like Hackley and you're like, well, the lower school students we're going to put on the bus, but not the upper. I'm like, well, we're sending the bus, and you pay for the bus. You don't, like, you pay for like that bus. So whether there's 2 kids on it or 8. So then it becomes like, what school do you choose? Like, okay, if we have a kid in the lower school, we'll send you, but these 3 kids were not, so I think it is costly. There's runs that are, I won't lie to you, that are very costly. And then there's some that are actually, oh, that's not too bad, so that's what makes it super challenging. And the other piece, and I definitely think, to Jeremy's point, I think you have to always look at it. You just have to. Like, you can't just, and we do try to, but we are part of a consortium. Part of being a part of the consortium is that what you're supposed to be doing is that we all do the same thing, because if I start pulling out, that hurt stops very hard. They could say, like, quite frankly, when I sometimes have an issue with the bus and I'm saying, well, I want to run that bus without your students on it, they could theoretically kick us out of the consortium for doing that. So there's a piece that, like, what I do impacts Dobbs, and we do share transportation, so, that's the piece that if the others, and I know that, and each year we all talk about it, you're thinking of doing it, but as of right now, we always have to look at it for ourselves, but the others are not looking at it.
So in other words, that might be, so if we have kids who go to Windward and Dobbs have kids
Yeah,
who go
we
to
share those
Windward,
buses.
so we share, so that must
All the
help a little
buses, for
bit.
the most part, except for our.
Yeah,
ones-
totally, that's
Yeah,
gotta
a little
help,
bit,
a little, exactly.
They're working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's-
And we
It
did
just
add
seems like it's a
Edgemont,
cost
and
we have
that's
to
been
bear.
making the routes pretty long, and people are not happy about it. I mean, I can tell you a lot of the parents are not happy with the current route, but, meaning more so our private school parents, because when we added Edgemont, that really helped us on some of the, I mean, it's actually, they are much more efficient, like I said, they're loaded up with kids, but, they seem to be working out well, and some of them are, and I feel, they're like, it's an hour and a half to get to Riverdale. I'm like, I'm sorry, I mean, we are trying to push those times a bit more, and we can definitely look at the providership, but busing is an expensive, it is an expensive service for the reasons we all understand why, so.
All right, well, lots of questions answered, thank you, and I know you're always looking at other solutions, so if somebody comes up with a brilliant new one.
I know,
I told you,
thanks, Mark.
Bill's getting the CD.
Yeah.
He's gonna drive our, no, I know, it is, it's a good thing to always look at.
All right, so, number 7, business items. Any questions or comments from board trustees in reference to business items 1 through 16?
I just have a question about the licensing. I'm sorry if you mentioned this already, Maureen. Great about the solar system, and good for whoever read that, like, very long contract for it. But now that there's so many supply chain issues, do you know when they're gonna be able to start even installing them?
I mean, I think this is now allowing them to kind of go into the full engineering, so, I mean,
So we don't have the answer on that yet.
no, but I would say it's definitely closer than we were, a couple
Yeah,
months
no,
ago, but
it's
I
amazing,
think right
yeah.
now I don't get a sense, I don't want to speak for them, I don't hear them as having an issue with getting the materials. I think it's just right now ensuring that they get all the permit, the other
Yeah.
kind of paperwork. I mean, they've been very anxious, this company, I think they seem to be, they're engaging with other places and have already started some of these projects, not necessarily schools, but just in businesses around, and I have not heard of them having any issues.
Great.
And in the grand scheme of like solar projects, it is like, I guess for them, it's big for us, but it's not like an overwhelmingly large project, so I think we'll be seeing them, I'm hoping, within the year, or less, so. I think we start getting rental income as soon as they start engineering it, so that's a good thing.
And I think you said before that we get first dibs on the power.
We do.
And then whatever we don't use gets put back.
Well, it goes back, but it's
into
for,
the town.
it's for people who live here, yeah.
It's great, thanks.
Yep.
Two business items related to scholarships that residents
Oh, yeah.
established.
Thank
Just
you for
wanted to
bringing that
thank,
up.
thank the residents for establishing these and funding them, and I remember looking through a list, there was some list I found somewhere, there were like 46 or 42 different ones, and it's sort of interesting to sort of imagine, I don't know the backstory to them, but to imagine why they were started and why they persist, and just thank residents for staying connected to the district. It's important. And
Agree, it's really nice to read.
At Mystica Bay, the scholarship that was winding up, another one for Jill D.
Yeah, no, and I do want to recognize, I mean, the Dean family each year does contribute to the school, and there's a breakdown, some of it goes to as you can see in the letter to, I'm just laughing because I actually went with Mr. Dean like 2 weeks ago to Untermeyer's he wanted me to see, like, to meet with their gardener, to kind of talk about some of the landscape. It was actually real good, because I think we partner, I mean, he does have a lot of, because he not knowledgeable, but he kind of put us in contact, and it was actually a great visit for us. And, they have excellent people, as you can imagine, working at Untermeyer, so hopefully they're okay with us coming there, but we did gain a lot of information, and actually, based on that visit, we are going to move forward with some of the trees that they actually have planted at Untermeyer's that we think will be appropriate for the Burke Estate, so, yeah, so that, thank you for
Maureen, your
reminding me.
job is so varied and
So
I
very.
don't know, she wears so many
The
hats.
most interesting woman in the
every
world.
day is something
Yeah.
different. My
It's
goodness,
insane.
I can't believe what you cover.
No, it was a nice little break to
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
great.
go over to Untermeyer's, but it was really helpful because this wonderful, the staff there is, just really excellent, and Joe and I now have somebody there to kind of, to like run things by in terms of, if we're looking to put different types of trees in this particular area, so that's great.
Okay, thank you for
Great.
acknowledging us, community members. Do I have a motion to approve items 1 through 13?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, the motion is carried. 7B, placement services for CSE and CPSE. Are there any questions related to these items? Do I have a motion to approve the placements and services?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, the motion is carried. Number 8, personnel, 8A, appointments. Are there any questions related to the appointments in 1 through 8? Do I have a motion to approve appointments 1 through 8?
So moved.
And a second? Okay. All those in favor? Okay, the motion is carried. 8B, retirements of Ms. Guiney. I hope I'm saying her last name correctly. I did. Resignation, I'm sorry.
Royce.
Sorry, I skipped one,
yeah,
retirements
yeah.
first. Okay. Do we have any questions related to Amendment 1 listed in Part 8B on the agenda, the retirements?
Can I I just want to, acknowledge Lisa. Lisa Royce is actually my assistant. And, it's been it was a sudden, as she mentioned in her letter, something that she just, I don't even know, it's kind of more one, in the last few weeks, but I just really wanted to acknowledge, Lisa is a really key person in the business office and really supporting really the entire district, and she's been with us since 2008. I hired Lisa, and she has been just such a great support for me and for the office, and such a professional, and even though she's dealing with a lot herself, I think she really struggled with this decision, and she really loved working here, and we're sad to kind of see her go, but I just wanted to acknowledge all the work that she has done for the district, and she's very, very difficult to replace. I can tell you that, yeah. Even people in my office are like, who's it? Because it's like we're pretty tight quarters, and we do work a lot out. We're it's not like you get a break from it. We all eat in the office, so it's it's a lot. Beyond that, she's an amazing professional and high quality work, but also just the personal piece of when you lose a person you've worked with all those years together. So we wish Lisa the best, and we're going to miss her, and I just thank her for everything and all that she's done for the district.
Thanks, Maureen, yeah.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to approve Amendment 1 and retirements? And a second?
Second.
All in favor? And that is carried. On to 8C, resignations. We have one, and that's from Allison Guiney. I did want to just say the few experiences I've had with her, she's just been so incredibly professional and organized and knowledgeable and articulate. It's a real loss for us, but we wish her obviously best of luck going forward. But sorry to see her leave.
Agreed.
And I just want to echo what Allison said and say, the only thing I would add to that is to also recognize the place of empathy that she comes from in all her interactions with students. In the time that she's been here in this district, she's really been a valuable asset. It's going to be a significant loss for her, and I'm sure that while we'll bring on another exceptional district psychologist, she really, I think, brought a really great cultural shift in terms of like the interactions that she had with those students that she impacted very directly in her work. So very sad to see her go, wish her all the best, but, you know, boo hiss. She's not here with us anymore.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, do I have a motion to approve this resignation?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, the motion is carried for resignation, I should say. 8D, leaves of absence. Any questions related to the leaves of absence, 1 through 2 listed in 8D? Do I have a motion to approve the leaves of absence? And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Number 9, the minutes. Any questions about the minutes from our last board meeting on December 6th? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from December 6th? And a second? All in favor? Okay. And the motion is carried. Committee reports, number 10, facilities, and guess who is presenting that?
I mean, Alex was there too, so we did attach the slide deck. I mean, we're not going to show it, but it is part of the, you know, anyone at home can kind of see what was discussed, and I can kind of just give some, and then
Well,
Alex
yeah.
can jump in,
I
or
mean,
you can go.
What we went over, looking at some of the damage from storm in September, and discussing some of the complexities of plan mitigation. Some of it involves the village and the coordination with the village. We also looked at some of the mock-ups for the finishings in the middle school auditorium to try and make it brighter, sort of friendlier, happy space. Those are the two that I remember. Am I skipping something?
Yes, but we had, we really, again, we spoke about this at our previous meeting, about the long-term space planning utilization.
Oh, right.
And that we are in the process, for reasons that it's an immediate need, it's not just a wish list, developing an RFP to, I mean, it would be more than likely architects we're working with, but this is a separate service, so we're developing an RFP. Because in particular in this building, and also in these, well, some of it is with the, once Hillside is online, some of the existing building, we just want to ensure that when we place everybody, like, we're just taking into consideration, you know, anything, you know, prior to that space being, you know, reoccupied. And then, but here in particular, we're starting to see some of those waves, and with things, changes in special education, different needs in the system, we think it's best if we engage in a process so that we have a blueprint to move forward in the next few years to plan around that.
Right, so that was an RFP for a sort of a longitudinal space audit. So in the same way we sort of conceive of our budget as supporting the curriculum, this was sort of a physical budget of space and allocation and flexibility of, you know, if things change, could we change, could we meet the needs? So it sounded fascinating, and the process you described and thoroughness, you know, it gave me a lot of confidence that it's a sound way to move forward, so.
Right, so that's how people achieve sometimes maybe things that they would like to see, but then there's also just the practical things that we need to be thinking of. We know some of our students, they'll be moving, when they move from Hillside to this building, and we want to ensure that we have we're thinking of that when we're assigning spaces or thinking about needs that may be occurring in the next few years. I'm just looking through, and then we just spoke about some of the planned work for this that we're thinking about doing in our upcoming summer budget.
Sidewalks.
The sidewalks, and kind of just talking about our long-term, just kind of little repair work that we
All
planned
right, so
for.
one of the other issues we talked about was that, you know, parking's always an issue, particularly up at Hillside, but, you know, we're gonna have fewer parking spaces because of the village, what they do with Farragut, and we're already starting, and we've had a lot more staff. We mentioned a number.
We have a lot more staff in both
A lot more
buildings.
staff here now than we did 10 years ago. So comparatively, many fewer parking spaces, and I think we're all seeing some of the spillover onto Rosedale already. The 4 spaces are removed from, so there were some ideas about how to handle additional parking on both buildings.
Yeah, so one of the things we spoke about is that has been something that has been on our radar. It's just actually getting a little bit, it's just getting a little bit more like immediate that we have to address it. So, part of the facilities, planning meeting will be when we engage with our architects, now that we're kind of finishing up the capital work that's going on now and looking and presenting to the facilities committee some options for parking at both spaces. Looking at our current staffing. I think we also know that beyond the inconvenience it is for some of our staff, there's also safety concerns it brings to our streets around both buildings. So it's kind of works hand in hand. And then we just talked about some of the other things, security upgrades. I mean, we talked about a little bit about that tonight, which is also rolled into that kind of 5-year plan, things that we know that are a little bit, that are gonna either be recommendations come from the Capital Reserve Fund and things like that, that we're looking at, in planning for and considering. Just gave a bond update really quickly. And then we also just briefly, I had updated the facilities committee that the IMA agreement, which is the intermunicipal agreement, which was drafted by our attorneys, I had given that to the village. And that would then include, because it needed to be updated because it didn't really represent all the things we were doing with them anyway. But that would also include if they decide, being that now the decision from the Recreation Commission is to use, if they develop the skate park, would be to use the Burke Estate, that would then be included in that agreement. And then the solar update, that was the other piece we spoke about. So it was a pretty packed meeting.
It was actually.
So our second committee report is for the policy committee, and I don't know if you all, whoever is going to report out on that, if you want to tell us a little about these first reads for the 2 policies as well.
Do you-
I would ask Dr. Matesi to do that, since we are asking him to guide the process
Yeah,
now.
so you want to skip over to 11A then?
Maybe, if it sounds like a
Yeah,
reasonable time.
yeah. So, unless Alex, you want to do it, or you want me to?
Well, this is already a couple meetings ago, but media relations, we didn't have, let's see what this was.
I can do it if you want.
Okay, sure. I mean, it's,
Yeah, so I think these, as the board may recall, we worked with guidance of attorneys on this, Suzanne Volpe, and there's been for a couple years now a audit underway, or there had been an audit, and from that, an updating of the policies that needed to be. So media relations, while that is one not required, there was a set of red lines Suzanne had done, which you see here fully. Thank you, Melissa D., for making sure these all showed up. So the board, I don't want to speak for the committee, but what I took away is that you all agreed to these adjustments and felt this was ready for a first read. So let me see if there are questions or members of the committee want to speak to it. I will take silence as that you're fine. So the next one, policy number 4315, fairly straightforward. I mean, there were sort of some good questions as to the nature of why in public aid you worry about this, but there could be, particularly as it relates to health and hygiene, some family concerns about certain courses or aspects of courses. So it is recommended, while this is not a required policy, I don't think, I'd have to go back and look. This is, thank you for reminding me. It is recommended we have this, and there have been, as I understand, some questions about this, and.
and so the issue.
Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
The
No,
issue with
please.
this policy was that it's not a required policy, but it's referent in state law is very specific. There's a certain bar you have to meet in order to be sort of qualified to make a claim of religious belief conflict with curriculum. the local policy didn't have that sort of rigor. So there's a really sort of a tweak where Susan Volpe sort of borrowed the standard in New York State education law, and we brought it into policy to align the policy with the education law more evenly. So.
The only thing I might mention, it's going back up a little bit, is that the committee is currently still deliberating regarding policy number 0105, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think the committee's getting towards agreement, but what the committee asked was that we take it back to people like Janice Mateo Toledo to look at it relative to the framework that we use from the state to make sure there's coherence in the language and all, and then it'll come back in January. If we can get that done, it'll come back to the committee in January. And it may be ready for a first read. I don't want to get ahead of the committee, but my sense is it might be ready for a first read of the full board.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, the policy, the committees are open to the public, just that it's not recorded, correct? Because I feel like the DEI policy, I think, in our conversation, sometimes there is that confusion with curriculum, but this is really serving the marginalized group, and it's fair for individuals that are in that marginalized voices to be brought to the surface more than those that are benefiting the status quo. So, if community members want to come sit in, they should, because this is an important work that,
And it's good because Melissa Szymanski is in our meeting, so she's able to reference what's in
Reference
curriculum and what's not in
yeah,
curriculum, so it's very helpful.
because it's, I think that we need to get on with it. That's what.
We've made a lot of progress with
We
all these
did,
other
we
policies.
did.
What do you
Oh,
mean?
one meeting, right.
Yes, we did. I love our team. We
Thank
did.
you all for serving on that committee. Number 12, our second public comment.
None at this.
Did we have to
oh,
approve
sorry.
the minutes from the committee? Sorry, from the
Oh.
policy committee? 10B, do we need to approve that? We don't need to
No.
approve minutes?
Not minutes.
Okay, great, sorry.
So no second comments coming into Ms. De La Barrera. So we can open it up to any comments from our Board of Ed members.
You first.
I was saying, I just want to thank this team. I know it's, I personally wasn't sure whether I was actually going to continue. But I feel like there's a lot of progress. Like this is, we butt heads and then we are right back to being very productive with what we have to do. So, and I also want to, I look at the students at the corner of my eye a lot, and I think they are fine leaders, and I just want to publicly say that. And I appreciate you guys being here. I'm not trying to talk down at you. I hate it when I was a student, but I'm not trying to patronize you either, but I just want to recognize your inputs and everything that you bring to the table. And Maureen, oh my goodness. It's the end of the year, that's what I'm saying, my comment.
Oh, no, it's like the top 10.
2021, yeah, it's the end of the year. So I just want to thank Melissa, everybody, and Dr. Matthews, of course. And so that's all I want to say. That's my board comment.
I just wanted to raise, just off the cuff, as a layman, obviously, we're all going to be dealing with the COVID situation in January and the Omicron, and just, it's an issue that I pay attention to a lot, and I think that, we've sort of discussed a little bit is how it's our perspective on it's going to change, how we look at it, it's going to change. I would just mention two things that might not be general knowledge, that with Omicron, in Denmark sequences all their positive their COVID cases. So they're able to really see what the numbers look like very specifically. And There was a report that came out this week that from the Danish government, they had 785 Omicron cases, and 83% of those cases were in fully vaccinated people. So it's going to be a different situation. Now, the good news from that set of data is that severity was 1.2% of those hospitalized, that's single digits, 9 people, I think, and 0.3, just 2 people were in ICU there, no doubts. And they had the population of that 785 only had a 4.3 incidence of previous COVID infection. So it's a complex picture. And I would also mention that in South Africa, which is 6 to 8 weeks, ahead of us with Omicron, this week apparently they've discontinued contact tracing or even quarantine because in their situation they didn't think it was worth it. And I'm not advocating for anything specifically, but I'm saying that the picture is going to get more complex. And, that's a challenge that we have to face to what we choose to look at and how we choose to respond to it. And so just to mention that that's what I see. I'm glad we're having this break, but that's something that we're probably going to tackle in January. And so hopefully it's straightforward enough. So thank you all for 2021, and I hope 22 is a whole other. We should start the decade in 22. Be off and running. But thank you everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think that hopefully just to your point in terms of positivity, I think the game changer in the COVID is not going to be vaccines. It's going to be treatment options. So it sounds like all those pills that are coming out to treat COVID are, I think that could be what changes everything for us in 2022.
There's a
It's
lot
my
coming.
hope.
There's a lot coming.
Yeah.
Sure.
It won't look the same as this year.
Thank you for that. And to everyone, for all you've done this year and will do next year. But let's get everybody home. So do I have a motion to adjourn our meeting for December 20th?
So moved.
And a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all
Oh,
opposed?
Jeremy has to say something.
No, I was voting.
The ayes have
stay.
it.
He wants to
And
stay.
we may say